Good evening. Today is Tuesday, March 26th. This is the regular meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 9th, 2019 special meeting board budget work session?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, amendments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 12th, 2019 regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any amendments or discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We now have an opportunity for public comment. Would any members of the public like to comment? Okay.
It's funny because I really had decided not to make a comment tonight, but with such an audience, I thought it would be a good opportunity to do that. So I haven't planned anything, although it's been mulling in my head for a while. You all know I'm retiring, so I sort of feel like this is my last chance. I'm actually here tonight not to speak. I'm here as a representative of the RTA just to observe the board, so just so you know. In any case, I guess the last thing I'd like to say is I'm pleased that I'm leaving at a moment when the high school and the district has made the decision to attend to the social and emotional needs of students moving forward. I think that's an important commitment. I think it's just a brief statement that I just want to sort of put on your radar as a reminder, which is that as you talk about curriculum and programs, to remember the average student, the average American, because it's the average Americans, it's the average student who then goes on when they're finished with public school and they found their calling, their passion, that overachieves. So you can't necessarily predict from their performance in high school what they might achieve in life or as a contributor to society. I've listened to conversations about program, and quite often the conversations at this level have to do with heterogeneous grouping, homogeneous grouping, AP classes, number of kids in AP classes. So I guess the last thing I want to say is don't forget, as you make decisions about program and curriculum, the average student and the average American, because they need as much consideration as other students. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment? Okay. Then we have an opportunity to hear from our BMS students. BMS students.
Good evening. I'm just going to make some introductions. As you know, through my board reports, I'm a proponent of taking the opportunity to take the opportunity that we share a campus with our high school, that we are a small school district in a small community. My staff and I are always looking for opportunities to have middle school students work with elementary school students, to have middle school students work with high school students. We're always looking for those opportunities. I have a chance tonight to share with you an opportunity that was brought to us. And it was brought to us by a student whose initiative and creativity and dedication to giving back to her school district and to working with our middle school students really brought a phenomenal program to our kids, to my kids. Under the guidance of Mrs. Coble and with the assistance of several of her peers and friends, they've really created a wonderful opportunity for middle school students in the Bulkley Middle School STEM Club. Ellie Fisher.
So we are the high school mentors of the Bulkley Middle School STEM Club, and my name is Ellie Pitcher. I'm a junior and the president and founder of the club.
I'm Tallulah. I'm also a junior. I'm the vice president and a mentor for STEM Club.
My name is Katie, and I'm a mentor for the club, and I'm also a junior.
So we just like to begin with kind of our values for the club and the reason why it has come to exist. So last year I was in this technology class and as a sophomore, and I was one of 2 girls in a classroom of maybe 15 or 16 boys, and it was unfortunately a very restrictive and kind of negative environment. And I really felt like I was being judged based on the fact that I was a girl and not based on my true competence. And it was it felt like I couldn't fail or like make mistakes because I had to make it seem like I knew what I was doing 100% of the time, which just wasn't true. Because failure and making mistakes are 2 pieces of the process of innovation and invention and learning that are super important. And so I kept walking away from this class feeling super frustrated and just angry at what was going on and kind of feeling helpless, like I couldn't really do anything about it. And eventually I realized that this wasn't productive at all, and that if I wanted something to change, I would have to actively try and make the situation better and make it change. So I reached out to faculty in the high school and the middle school with this idea of creating a club that is more like welcoming of all different types of people and is good for middle schoolers and high schoolers to kind of work together and achieve what they want to achieve.
Yeah, and you might think that that might have been kind of an overreaction to a one-class thing, but it's not a one-class thing. The first year of AP Computer Science, I was one of only 3 girls in the class.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience with Ellie, and I was one of 2 girls in an engineering class of 20 boys. And yeah, it was very difficult to initially participate and find groups to work with, and it's, yeah.
And so this is an essay, this is part of an essay that I wrote last year, in the spring of last year. So I moved forward with the goal of creating a welcoming and inclusive environment for both middle school girls and boys to take part in science, technology, engineering, and math. My hope is that the creation of such a club will cause girls and boys to be able to work in a healthy and productive environment and way now as middle schoolers and later as high schoolers and beyond. Okay, so this is us. Those are all of the mentors. Some of them couldn't be here today. There's Jake, he's in there, and Ian, and Syra. Syra left for Argentina, but she'll be back next year. So our members, we started with 2. We had 2 members, Jesse and Hannah, and then the next week we had maybe 20 because we brought everyone down to the chemistry lab, and Mr. Stevenson did some stuff with fire, and that was a big hit. We've leveled off at about 15 or 16 students. And they couldn't be here today, but they had a lot to say about their favorite parts of the club and what they really liked. So we have some quotes from them.
Yeah, you can see from these quotes that they're very enthusiastic. Skylar said, "Every day there's something new and fun, and it keeps me from going home to do homework." Keely said, we can build things, and I get to see my friends." Aurora and Catherine said, "I just like all the projects and experiments we do." Theodora said, "It's a break from the normally mundane tasks at school, and it's more hands-on."
She's the poet.
Jessie said, "My favorite part is doing the projects where we get to build things." And Adrielle said, "My favorite part is building stuff, and there's food."
They really like the building. That's a big hit.
Daniela, Hannah, and Sarah said, "We get to build projects together that are really fun."
Yeah, they do a lot of impressive projects. Okay, so we've done an assortment of different demonstrations and projects. At the beginning of the year, we did a shark dissection, and we had Mark Condon. He's a biology professor at Dutchess Community College. We had him come in, and he brought his shark with him, and we dissected a dogwood shark, and he kind of showed us all of the different parts of it that make it unique to other sharks and fish.
We built lunar shelters where we talked about what humans might need, such as greenhouses or water replacement, and what they might want, which according to the kids would be hot tubs,
And pools.
and how we would get them to the moon. And they actually didn't really just find themselves interested in the design, but they were really into the specifics of transportation, of how light the materials were. We got a lot of questions about what kind of material we'd be using, and we were just kind of like, use your imagination. That was really inspiring. And this is our, we all made individual lunar shelters, and then we mashed them all together, and this is our big lunar shelter for everyone to live on when climate change happens.
This is what we're living on. We're building this for you, by the way. Okay, so we did nitrogen slushies. Mrs. Kogel really had to take the lead on this one because we didn't want anyone getting nitrogen burns. But we used soda and liquid nitrogen, and when you mix them together, it makes a slushy. They really liked that. They like eating things. These are pasta cars. That was kind of a challenge, an engineering challenge, because the wheels that we had and the axles didn't really mix, so they really had to get creative and do what they could with what they had. And Hannah made a crocodile car. That was pretty cool. Cork boats. So we accidentally had a surplus of corks, so we made boats, and they were super buoyant and they turned out really well.
Yeah, I particularly enjoyed this one because I got to combine efforts with a girl named Sarah. We built our own boat together, and that was really fun.
We also made pumpkin volcanoes, so just the regular baking soda and vinegar volcano, but we carved pumpkins for Halloween and put that together. Mr. Chemnitzer made an appearance at that one. So in conclusion, this is the second half of the essay that I had put together, and I felt that this really encompassed what I was fueled by and for the creation of this club. And it shows where we want to go and the way in which we want this club to inspire others and to impact the community. So most importantly, I hope to see that fewer girls are discouraged away from male-dominated STEM fields. While it has the potential to inspire the young people of the Rhinebeck community, STEM Club is only a single part of the solution to a worldwide issue of inequality. It is not the full answer, but it could be the beginning to empowering more young people to find more answers. And this is kind of where we're planning to go with this idea in mind.
So our three most promising new projects are the Aquapals. So that's an organization in Arlington High School that actually does aquaponics and has a fully functioning aquaponics system within the high school. And Ellie and I both have friends that are on the aquaponics team. So they have graciously agreed whenever we want to let all of the middle school students in STEM Club come and learn about aquaponics and explore maybe if that has a place within Rhinebeck Central School District or just to be interested in that. The second one we have up there is mushroom growth, which is actually a long-term project that we started today, where all of the kids seemed really excited they actually all committed themselves to a watering schedule and were really interested in the biological growth process and everything about growing mushrooms, especially again because they will be able to eat the product. And then our last one on there has to do with coding and hour of code. So the coding aspect of this, with the mentors combined, we've actually been in every technology class that Rhinebeck has to offer, or are currently in every technology class. And so we have a pretty comprehensive understanding of what kind of skills that the middle schoolers will develop in high school and what they will kind of want to have going in. And I know that in middle school there is some coding aspects to the technology classes that we take. So Ellie and I have spoken to Mr. Johnson, who is in the tech room downstairs, about going down there for some STEM club and maybe expanding on what they're learning in middle school or just seeing what they're interested in. And then that might lead to Hour of Code, which is an international event that we will participate in if the kids are interested.
Okay, so that's all we have for you today, but we'd really like to thank you for having us and thank you for listening. And a very special thank you to Mrs. Kogel and Mr. Kemnitzer for making the club possible. And we're just super grateful for the platform that the school has given us to create this club. So thank you.
Thank you. So before you guys race away, does anybody have any questions or comments? Lisa?
Well, I'm very impressed, and I'm very grateful to you all for coming and telling us about this, because this is why we're here, so that we can support you in these activities. But I'm interested very much in the issue of the disparity in interest and motivation, and likely encouragement of young women into STEM areas of study. So I hear what you're saying about the disparity that you faced in high school classes, but in the BMS club, were you also seeing an overbalance of male students, or was the split more equal?
In the club, it's very balanced. We have a fairly even amount of boys and girls, and they're all like work together on projects. And we kind of briefly touched on this and the goals and why it was created at the very beginning to them. So we didn't really go all the way into it, but we explained it in a way that made it seem like so that they knew that it was an environment where they could feel free to just be and to just create and do what they wanted to do with each other. And so
We're hoping that the experience of having female mentors and female peers and just
Alongside
all of that
male
interspersed together will speak more for kind of closing that gap and creating more interest.
That's great, and I think that you're absolutely right to focus that way.
Thank you.
Diane?
I don't have any questions. I think this is amazing what you've done, and that you're inspiring the next generation of young girls that are going to go on to the high school and be able to take classes that interest them. I think that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and sharing that.
And I'd really like to commend you for not just being frustrated, but for doing something to bring about change. It's really important, and it's a wonderful thing that you guys got together and decided to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
any other questions?
Anybody else? Okay, thanks you guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Tom, you ready for a little budget talk?
All right. I put a packet of information out in front of you. I made a few changes to the budget over the past 2 weeks. We're getting closer to the bottom line, which is good to hear. But so I want to go through this. Now, what you should be going for is this. It is on the top. And it is the 2019-20 budget development process. We can skip the first page. We've already gone through that through last meeting. As we flip the page to the second page, you'll see about halfway down additions to the second draft budget. So since 2 weeks ago, a couple of things have come up. And the first one, I got the official BOCES administrative charges, and I was about $1,000 short of my estimate. So I had to add $1,000 to bring those administrative charges up to cover the cost. The next two expenses are for a student that I took out of the budget who is supposedly coming back. So I had to add back in for tuition and transportation to that facility. More to be determined in the future, but right now we are anticipating the student is coming back to the district. And in addition, there's a transfer to special aid fund of about $4,000. One thing, as I was going back through, I looked at it and I saw that one of the issues we had this past year, not a real issue, it wasn't, we're talking minor dollars, but I want to make sure I cover the expense, is a transfer to the special aid fund. In the summertime, our students with special needs can go to a various different types of situations. Now, they can be tutored by us here, or it's possible they may be going to a BOCES program, or we have some kids who are in residential programs year-round. And during the summertime, we typically get 80% of those costs back. So the state picks up 80%, we pick up 20%. But what's happened over the past couple of years is New York State's fine-tuning their pencils, and they're not giving us 80% in all cases. So we've seen a slight increase, not tremendous, but a slight uptake in the state not covering certain costs that they believe are above and beyond what we should be getting. So I don't always get 80% back on everything. I get 80% back on what they think is correct. So that's a different thing that's been taken. And there's really only one area that's occurred in, and that's with our students at BOCES. The state education department doesn't agree with their summer tuition rate. So
With
they
the
only give
BOCES
it-
summer
The BOCES, so we pay that amount because we have to, but SED says it should only be this. And they will only reimburse us on 80% of that. So not only pick up the 20%, but the part that they won't cover. And that's the case in some cases, you know, because the one thing that, at least with the private and parochial schools, they're not capped at anything. They're not under any tax cap legislation. So a lot of times we see their tuitions going up 5–6%. Wow. BOCES has been very good. They've been really around too. So it's not like they've been, but the state's just re-looking at the BOCES and they're saying that it's costing too much. So BOCES is aware of that, and we are talking with them to say why you guys need to talk with them, because either you're overcharging us or they don't believe, you know, what's the difference there. So I added like an additional 4,000 there, and I went through, and as you know, we had a new DHIC rates that were presented to me a little over 2 weeks ago, but I was able to go through and do the computations, and I was able to reduce the health insurance by $110,000. So overall, this rendition is $47,650 less than the previous rendition of this. So what does that do? So if we flip the page over, we have a budget that's 2.99% from year to year. The tax increase, now that don't look at that tax increase, that's not right, I can tell you right now. It's not the correct number. That correct number is 343. It is not 4.50.
Is that a typo, or is that a?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a typo.
Okay.
It's 343. Our maximum allowable tax levy is about $29,800,000, which is 3.44. So we're just a little bit above the tax limit of $8,525. I'm sure we'll be able to make up this up between now and then. It's just that there's still some information out there we're still waiting on. I mean, I know special ed is still going through their CSE meetings. So far, nothing has come up where I needed to add or subtract any money so far. So, but they're ongoing.
We're also waiting for the final state.
Yeah.
Correct.
budget.
And that's the other thing, is getting a final state number. It's quite possible that, you know, it may get picked up on that side.
We may also get less than, I mean, I don't assume anything with state aid these days, so that remains to be seen. I'm hoping it's a huge swing up, although I'm not optimistic that'll happen. I'm hoping it's not a huge swing down, but
Okay.
we'll see.
So we are about $8,500 from getting to tax levy cap. Our next meeting is April 9th, okay? which is the date in which we are expected on the budget calendar to adopt the budget. But we can go another 2 weeks to April 23rd. We have a board meeting that night. And actually, the last day to actually approve it is April 26th, that Friday. So I wouldn't want to wait that long, but between April 9th and, we do have to April 23rd to make a final decision. And so I'm kind of hoping that we can, this should definitely come in under the tax cap. But we have to wait. Hopefully, we get good news on the state aid side. Can't say one way or the other. I have no idea where that's going up there. And then what you have is a bunch of backup that goes with all this, so. Does anybody have any questions about these minor changes? They're not humongous, but we're almost there.
I'd just like to ask, it's not directly related to the numbers, but on the issue of the BOCES reimbursement for the summer programs.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any mechanism for this district to challenge state ed's holding back reimbursement monies from us?
BOCES is looking to do it because they're trying to.
So it would have to be coming from BOCES?
Coming from BOCES, but
Right.
we've told BOCES to reach out to them because there's a difference. They're not, and this affects all the school districts
Right.
in Dutchess County.
Okay.
But
But
just to give you an example, it's $2,000, and I'm just making $2,000 to send a child there for the summertime. And we'd get reimbursed 80% of that, which would be $1,600. $400 would be ours, $1,600 would be theirs. But they're saying, no, the program's only worth $1,800 a month. So we get reimbursed 80% of $1,800, not $2,000.
Right.
So we got to figure out why they're not including that $2,000 in those computations.
Understood. But no, my question is really more process question. So if, for example, BOCES said, we're not going to press the state on this for reasons having nothing to do with Rhinebeck,
Yeah.
would we have any recourse to challenge it?
Oh, it's a good question. I'll talk with Christine, because Christine deals, this is called stacking.
Right.
So she works with the stack unit in Albany all the time. So I can definitely
Okay.
pose that question to her
Right.
to ask to them as
Right.
to what the process for an individual school.
Okay.
It's not our tuition, but
Our
we're paying
money.
it. It's not our, but we are paying that
Yeah.
tuition. Right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Steve?
Let me just ask on the revenue page, Tom, what that says, interfund transfer to special aid of 10,000, is that different than
Yes.
this
Right, okay, so this
57,000?
this is a revenue. This works in the opposite way. We get a percentage of some grants, what's called an administrative fee. That's for the administrative offices of the business office, the district office, curriculum office to support the grant. So in some cases, we can get up to 1 or 2% of the total grant, and that comes in as a revenue
From who?
from the federal government. So in their grants, let's say there's a $300,000 grant, there probably is a line in there for administrative fees as a revenue coming back to us for like maybe $6,000. We use our administrative ratio against the total expenditures of that program, certain expenditures, not all. So yeah, that comes to us as a revenue. It's really an expense. It's really the cost of the office running their programs.
And they give us a formula
Yeah.
above which we cannot claim more than
Correct,
that.
yeah.
Mark?
The last sheet is items for consideration. Are any of these or none of these in the budget
No,
currently?
none of these
No.
are in the budget, and we're hoping that if we get that headway, that we would be able to add something into it, possibly, if the board agrees to it. That's what we're hoping would happen, that we'll be able to, if we find out about the status of a particular person, we may be able to free some money up to be able to consider some of these things on this list. What I did try to do is to go through, and it is a little bit more, if you look at that first line where it says Naviance, and so I've made a change here, and I got new numbers. It's a little bit cheaper than what was previously, about $6,700 for the first year. And as we look at the next year, you see about 3,500. And basically, it almost got cut in half. And this is just paying for the program itself. But that doesn't include any support, okay? And I don't think we'll need support afterwards. I mean, I think it's just the first year of support is really needed in the first year.
Do you need any
You know,
hardware?
What's that?
Any
No,
hardware?
No hardware, no. And so, as you see right below it, less the BOCES aid, which is about 50%. So I took half of the 6,700, and that's about what we should get back. And you see the cost that year of 3,500. All right, the net cost next year is 150. The next year as you go out, all right, I'm increasing the price by 5%, but I'm only getting half of the prior year. And so you see it about 1925. So, you know, I think in the end, you're going to end up really basically about $2,000 a year for that program after the first initial outlay, which is definitely a possibility. And then there's one thing that, or actually two other things under the swim practice transportation. I had round trip transportation, what I got figures for. I'm going out to get what's a one-way trip. And then coming back from there, just as another possibility to look at. I did add one other thing down at the very bottom, arts and education. We've been at $20,000 since I've been here, and I know that the arts and education, we'd love to see additional monies to use in that program. Just out there as an idea, nothing more than just that. It just provides more program for our teachers to go in about a different way through the arts and ed. And also in the arts and ed, we get about half of that back the following year too.
Because we
Just to
spend
let
it
you
through
know.
BOCES,
We go through
COSA.
BOCES for this, so we get about half of that money back.
So our total budget line for arts and ed would be 25?
Well, we also pick up, there's also another fee in there. that we have to
A BOCES fee?
There's a BOCES.
Administrative
The
fee.
administrative fee in there. That doesn't change. That number's been pretty fairly constant. Actually, that number's actually been going.
No matter how much we spend.
Yeah, that
True
doesn't
that.
change that one number. Just to be a part of the coaster is X%.
Okay.
I mean, one of the things we did talk about, because there was quite a bit of discussion and interest in Naviance from our budget work session a couple Saturdays ago, and we all jammed into a room yesterday, I think. Was it yesterday? It seemed like last week.
No,
To do an online demo of Naviance. So those of us who aren't that familiar with it got to actually see a number of the features. And again, the good news was it's less expensive than we had originally ballparked, but I did make the point with our administrators, to the point you brought up at the work session, that if we're going to add anything from this list, we have to keep in mind the sustainability of that. We don't want to buy into Naviance in year one and then wind up cutting it out of the budget in year 2 or year 3. I mean, if we're going to go down the road with any of these, it's with the idea that these are long-term commitments that we're making, and if we don't feel we can, then we probably shouldn't. So our administrators are well aware of that conceptually, but Naviance looks like it's within reasonable striking distance. So we'll see how the final numbers lay out.
Tom, could you just talk about the field hockey numbers? Because we have field hockey. Did you take field hockey out of the budget, and would this be merged numbers?
No, that's true. I have field hockey's in the budget, so you're right. It's really no additional charge there, other than the transportation piece. And I mean, I think there's a lot of questions that still have to be answered about this. First of all, is Pine Plains going to be looking, is it one coach? Are they looking to supply a coach also? So there's 2 coaches there. I don't know. I don't know what that is. Now, we are transporting there already, but there will be times when we need to transport when we're not bringing football over.
Games.
Games.
They have a game when football doesn't have a game, for example,
Yeah,
which is likely to happen frequently. Yeah.
and then sometimes, a football practice might get canceled, but field hockey's on, or vice versa, that type of a thing. Yes.
Okay, so this is your estimate of the merged numbers, but not minus what we currently.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that,
Yeah.
because we do have field hockey budgeted for in the athletic department.
I mean, that said, we still haven't finalized any arrangements with Pine Plains for a merger in that sport yet. I mean, we've had a number of discussions, it's been going back and forth, but we don't have enough detail as we sit here tonight to say this number is an absolutely firm number. It's an estimate, yeah.
Right.
And can you tell us what the GMF software is?
All right, that is a piece of software that Steve Jensen came to me in regards to, and you'll see it's a little bit higher in the first year, and then it tails off because the first year had some extra expenses for it. But this piece of software would help with work in conjunction with the carts. All the carts, iPad carts, Apple carts,
Laptop cards.
any laptop cards we have. And the issue we have right now is that anytime we have to update a program or install a program, anytime we need to touch it, it's all have to do machine by machine by machine. What this would enable us to do, as long as they're in the cart and in there and connected, they will automatically do the updates to all 30 laptops at one time, as opposed to doing 30 individually. So this would cut down tremendously on the burden of going laptop by laptop, iPad by iPad.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have.
Lisa?
The Dutchess Community College credit, is that what you mentioned to us a couple of times about the DCC increasing the cost to us?
That's correct. They used to charge us a per credit fee and offset that with a rental fee, so
Right.
it was really
It's a
at no
wash.
cost.
Right.
So and I don't think it's just Dutchess. I was at a meeting that had absolutely nothing to do with this budget. It was an athletics meeting, and somebody was there from, I believe, from Ulster Community College, talking about coaching courses and whatever. And they had also brought up the idea of students taking courses at the college or in the home school like we do. And I just kind of turned that conversation off because our students we don't have a relationship with Ulster because I think the counties are kind of territorial, and Dutchess has their, well, I mean, I get that. They don't poach one another's students, for better or for worse, but he did mention, a per credit fee that they have, so they charge a fee. I don't know that it's exactly the same, but I'm not sure what may have happened at the state level where they're saying to colleges, you got to start charging a fee
Okay.
that's not offset by rental or something like that.
So let me ask you a follow-up question then.
Sure.
If this doesn't go into the budget, does that mean we will no longer offer the course to Rhinebeck students here?
Mhm. I believe we'll still offer the course, but again, as with the AP test
It's the-
situation, if they want the credit,
They'll pay.
they'll have to pay 12 times 3 to get the credit. Otherwise, they just take the course and get the benefit of taking a college course, but not the benefit of the credit, which is a benefit to some kids and perhaps not a benefit to other kids.
Okay.
Any other budget questions? Jacqueline?
What's the K through 5 guidance?
That's a placeholder that Tom put in this list relative to the state required guidance plan. And we're working on we've had a guidance plan, but we have to update it per new guidelines from the state education department. And there's been some, I guess I'll use the word confusion uh, statewide about the interpretation of some of those guidelines, specifically as it relates to elementary school guidance counseling. Actually, when Tom put this together more than a month or so ago, there was some thought that school districts might have to be hiring elementary school counselors, which obviously is an economic impact. But as the conversations have moved forward, it seems like the requirement is to be able to provide access to counseling, not necessarily have a part-time or a full-time counselor in every elementary school. I mean, a school district could do that if they wanted to or had the resources to, but I think, quite frankly, I think in the days of the tax cap, I think they got a lot of blowback saying, you're not telling us we have to hire more staff now. So I think they've softened the guidelines and given school districts more leeway. So for example, we could have, if needed, we could have one of the counselors from the middle school or the high school go to our elementary school for a specific purpose, not necessarily to be there every day or part of every day. So at the time, we were looking at something that was going to be potentially more expensive than that. Tom put this dollar figure in the budget, which was an approximate cost of purchasing a .2 FTE counselor from BOCES. As you know, BOCES can, if more than one school district wants to share an employee, they can. So this was under the assumption that we might have to have at least a .2 FTE counselor in our elementary school, but it doesn't look like that's going to be a road we have to go down at this point.
What would be the difference between a counselor, a guidance counselor, and social worker?
Well, that's a great question, and it might, well, and that's one reason why I think we can meet the requirement, but you might imagine that the State Association of Guidance Counselors has very strong feelings about why a guidance counselor is the right person to meet student needs. And they had a lot to do with the formulation of this template for the guidance plans. So I'll let you connect the dots there. And I'll say no more because I don't want to say anything more. But I think that given the staffing we have, and not only the staffing we have, but also the fact that we have brought 2 new programs online that are being taught by classroom teachers in our elementary school, and that the guidance plan does provide for that to be a way to, those programs don't have to be taught by a guidance counselor or a PPS professional. The guidance plan guidance actually allows certified teachers to provide that, which we're doing. So I think it seems like we've filled a lot of the gaps even before the guidance plan guidance was released to the field. So I think we're going to be okay, but at the time we were putting this together, there was some thinking out there in the field that we actually had to hire some portion of a guidance counselor's time, and it looks like either that's not happening or that's not required. Most, if not all, of the my colleagues in at least on this side of the river are not planning on budgeting to hire new guidance counselors as a result of this. So I think we're going to be okay right now, the way it seems. But that's why it's on the list. And we could always do that. It wouldn't hurt to have a .2 guidance counselor in our elementary school. But I don't think we need it to meet the requirements of the new guidance plans, is my point.
Anyone else? Okay, let's move on to committee reports. I think we have long-range planning.
Okay, that's me, and I first apologize for the typo in my minutes, sorry about that. Joe updated us first, he had a discussion with Lloyd Yeager. If you remember from last time, we had talked about asking for his help in creating the long-range plan document. So Joe had talked with him on the phone, and then he came back to us, and we were going to hopefully talk with him at our, all of us will talk together at our next meeting. We'll get him on the phone and talk through that process. Then we talked about something that the committee feels is the next thing that the committee should take up. This has come up on the CSA report, and it's come up in our meetings over the last 2 years also. And that's looking at studying the current district structure. It was felt that it's probably best for Joe to do this. It's something not Joe and his staff or whoever he feels that would be best. Not best for us as a committee to kind of sit down and pull all that information together. And we want to make sure that when studying this, we're looking at what's best for students, our physical space, in our buildings, our staff, finances, and then any new opportunities that could be, if there could be any new opportunities with any change. So I think that's what we talked about our last meeting.
Any questions?
Just a comment, I'm sorry, somebody had. Just so the board and the LRP committee are aware, Tom and Marvin and I did a speakerphone pre-meeting with Lloyd yesterday to talk about some of these issues. So I think we'll be better prepared to have a more meaningful conversation with you guys on April 8th. Yeah.
Was that set for April?
Yes, April 8th, and when was the time? I think it was like
10:45.
No, not
10:45.
10:30.
10:45.
It's a Monday.
10:45.
That's why we made it Monday.
Tired and he's not.
He doesn't have to get up at ungodly hours.
So don't show up in your slippers and your jammies.
I'm sorry, it was April 8th.
Unless you really
10:45 on April 8th.
Unless you really want to.
How long do you like my slippers?
Any other questions for long-range planning? I want to remind everybody that we did sort of leave the opportunity hanging last time about whether we have a Saturday work session about the CAC committee and their recommendations, or talk about it at an upcoming board meeting. I'd kind of like to take a straw poll because time's a wasting and I don't want those ideas to lay fallow. So who would prefer to take time on a Saturday or Sunday than at a board meeting? 1, 2, 3. Who would prefer to do this at a board meeting? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Can I throw out a third
Sure.
option?
Yes.
As opposed to a Saturday or a Sunday, we could carve out another night, like an off Tuesday
Yeah.
evening to do it then. I'm just saying we
Yes,
could.
we could do that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's throw that opportunity out there.
Everybody already voted.
Well, we didn't have 3 options.
Come on for another
To be
option.
fair.
So is the budget proposal meeting going to be attached to a board meeting?
Oh,
When you present to the public?
yeah,
Okay.
yes,
So that- I was just thinking that'd be an option.
yeah.
All right, so, given all 3 options, who would like to take just another night, non-board meeting? I'd be willing to do that. All right, then if we could get one of those, thank you for
Yeah.
that suggestion.
Yeah, no
If we
problem.
could get
Right.
some dates out to everybody
Yep.
to see what we can do.
We'll work on that.
That would be great.
And I'll, if at all possible, I'll try to stick with Tuesdays since people usually kind of Tuesday's an off night.
Maybe
for-
we could start earlier than 7.
That's a possibility
If
too.
people are available.
About lunch.
What?
7:30.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, we'll get back to you with some possibilities on that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, audit.
Oh, those are mine too. Okay, so in audit, we discussed hiring a new internal claims auditor. As you remember, our current auditor will be leaving us on June 30th, so Tom is going to be sending out the post for that this week. This week.
Yep.
He's going to conduct the initial interviews, and then the committee will meet again for the final, to review the final candidates. We went through the EFPR engagement letter, everything was fine with that. Tom was going to ask for some more specific testing to be done from him. We went over it's called the CRE, what that actually stands for, but an exit conference, it's basically a federal audit that's done every 3 years. It's an audit in regard to the cafeteria. There's a few minor things that were called out. Everything has been taken care of. There's one maybe more interesting piece was there's a Buy America provision that the state has. So any federal monies that are used, you have to buy products in the USA. And so there was just maybe a little bit of confusion about how that formula might work, because we don't get that much money back, but we certainly, most of our products are from the USA. It was just a small handful of those, so that was the only thing. And then the administrative audit, that's going to be starting soon. We had made some changes to that, so that delayed the start of it, but that should be starting up, so.
Questions for audit? I have two. The Buy America provision, is that new?
No, I don't think it's.
Or is it just being?
I think within the past 3 or 4 years.
Was it?
Yeah, I think it's been 3 or 4 years it's been in place.
Just the rules are a little fuzzy, whether it's, if you get money, everything has to be, or is that just that proportion of dollars that you get have to be used for American products?
And
And how do you monitor that?
Right. How do you
Right,
determine-
how do you verify?
Because
Right.
out of our
Right.
budget, the percentage for federal money, you could certainly say we purchase American products.
Yes.
But,
Right.
'cause
They
most of
noted
ours-
it.
But when they audit, I don't know, they just called out a few things. But again, also our suppliers, when they send things, we don't get a truck full of things. You don't read every label to see where something might come from. So you don't get it till it shows up. So, and they're saying you should send it back, but
Call them back, right? Come get it.
yeah,
And when is the administrative audit going to start? Is there a date?
Tom?
In speaking with Ken, the person that he wants to do this is still in Florida.
It's getting warm up here. He can
It's a
come back.
retired person, and they are coming up here soon. My understanding, it sounded like they were coming back for the Easter, so he was expecting sometime after that to then we get up and going.
Then personnel, we talked about a number of topics, all of which are only good for executive session, but the topics we covered were the administrators' negotiations, policy 9410, substitute teachers, cafeteria workers, and managerial confidential employees. Our next meeting's April 25th.
Those are like my minutes.
I know, I'm taking I know, it's just,
ever.
they are. All right, we have time for some good news. Would anybody like to share some good news? I think we got a platinum rating
Yeah,
for
there you go.
safety, didn't we?
Yeah, and, Tom's smiling face on our
Yeah.
website holding this
Geez,
flag.
Steven.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You get the picture. That
Hey,
was sent me a
you've
picture.
you've gone viral.
Do we get anything for this other than the plaque?
A warm fuzzy feeling, although there is another level of this award. There's a platinum, titanium with honors that comes with a $500 check.
Let's get that
So
Yeah.
we're gonna go for that one next year.
Good.
As far as I'm concerned.
Get the new Apple titanium credit card. Cash back 2%.
There you go.
I have a little bit of good news.
Yes.
CRE stands for Coordinated Review Effort.
They're
Well,
not
it's
living up
good
to
news
their name.
because.
Because we know what it is now.
Review effort.
Oh,
Not comprehensive review. something or
Coordinated
other.
review.
Okay.
Yeah.
Coordinated
That's
good.
review effort.
Any other good news? Okay. Old business? We have an opportunity for public comment. Would anybody like to make further?
This is really my last time.
You can come visit any
We have
time.
several meetings before the end of the year.
Susan Mull and Matt Van retirement. So before, when you were talking about the new state regulation for guidance counselor in the elementary school, I just want to put in a pitch for, because there are going to be many opportunities where you're going to consider using existing staff to cover more than one building. And when, on a day-to-day basis, I can only speak for the high school, although I think it's also pretty intense in the middle school, our guidance counselors, social worker, and school psychologist are putting fires out for kids every day. And squeezing in the kids that they have a commitment to, that they are legally obliged to see in between crises. So they're really stretched. So I just want you to keep that in mind and hope that you will ask good questions regarding taking any of those people and splitting them between buildings, because it has an effect for the availability of crisis counselors for our kids, and they're in crisis more and more all the time, and it breaks everybody's heart, but it is a reality that can't be disregarded. So that's my pitch.
Thank you.
Could I make a comment?
Yes.
Just so we don't start a rumor that's not necessary, we are not anticipating assigning anybody to multiple buildings
Great.
from that area. I mean, having a counselor go to chancellor 4 times a year is far different than having a counselor be a chancellor for half the day, every day. And we're not, at this point anyway, anticipating doing anything even close to that. So
I'll make sure that the correct information is
thank you.
circulated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for clarifying.
Mhm.
Okay, do we have other?
I know.
I have an other. I don't know whether you guys had the opportunity to read our Rhinebeck Reality newspaper,
No.
but I did with great joy, because it's really reading like a student newspaper now, and thank you, Reagan, I'm thrilled. But I wanted to bring up the article about censorship in Rhinebeck Reality. There's a comment in this article about our board policy, about student publications. And I am curious how the policy committee feels about its ability to cover situations that students may feel are appropriate to cover in the newspaper. Specifically, what was called out is online media and personal ads. And I'm not really sure what the author meant in specific, but I think it would be worthwhile to sort of relook at that policy in the eyes of what the students are trying to communicate, what their advisor thinks is appropriate to communicate that they may otherwise not be able to. So, just a thought from me.
I already had it in my policy folder to talk about at your meeting. I saw it too. The only thing I would say is we have obviously reviewed that policy earlier than it says in the article, because we've reviewed all the policies in the last few years. But yeah, I agree with you, I wasn't 100% sure what they were getting at, but yeah, I think it makes sense for the policy committee to just talk about it again and look at it and make sure it's current. So it should.
Because here we go again anyway, right?
Yeah, you gotta
We're
start
starting
every
through,
5
so,
years or so.
We're starting at the beginning again.
Yes, we are.
Oh, see, you've had so much fun revising all the policies.
Missed one.
Very long
Well,
process.
Yes.
It's big.
From my read of the the article that you referenced, it seemed to me that and I could have misinterpreted it, but it seemed to me that the comment was relative to the fact that our policy doesn't address current digital media.
Yes.
And in fact, it doesn't. So I think that's something that probably needs to be updated about that policy. And I mean, I'll just leave it at there. I'd want to go back and read it again, but clearly that policy was written quite a few years ago before we were dealing with the proliferation of digital communication. So it may in fact deserve to be revised accordingly. So I think that's a great idea.
Would it be possible or appropriate to invite the author of the article to our policy meeting
Might be.
to be sure that we're...
It might be. We could do a little field trip. I'm not sure whether our
Maybe during the
meetings.
day.
Yeah. Sure. We can talk about that.
7:30.
No, we don't need it 7:30.
Everybody
Yeah.
meets at 7:30.
We meet right in the middle of the day.
All right.
I suggest we might want to review it again, so we're making good use of that kind of activity. And again, I'm sitting here right now. I want to go over it again before we start chewing up any student time
Yep.
with. But yeah, sure, why not?
Any other? One quick question about the FYI in the back, about the Yale Ruler program. Is this something that could potentially be in our budget for this year, or is it just something that may be considered down the road?
It's a program that supports the board's social emotional goal, as well as the CDEP goal in that area. Excuse me. It's I believe that Dr. Davenport and Ms. Davison have both attended an awareness session on the program. They apparently have had two cohorts of schools go through the training, and then the implementation follows the training, obviously. I attended an awareness session on that program, I think about 3 weeks ago. Very impressive. I think at this point, they recommend you not implement the program across your district in every school. I mean, it's a lot of work. They recommend that a school district focus on starting in a school and then look to expand it in subsequent years. At this point, I would say there seems to be some strong interest on Dr. Davenport's part in bringing this program to Rhinebeck High School. Obviously, he needs to have discussions. I think he's had discussion with department chairs. He wants to discuss it with his entire faculty before we commit. But in terms of budget support, we've discussed it with Marvin Krebs, and he has money that needs to be used specifically for teacher training types of things. So what he's told us is we'll just carve that out, and if we decide to implement that program, we have the support. It's a turnkey program. You train several people in your building, and then they bring it back and train their colleagues. Yeah. So we do have support, grant support for doing that, not budget support.
That's great.
Hmm?
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, moving on to action items. Does anybody want to remove anything from the consent agenda? Joe?
Yeah, could I ask that we remove 7.1.5 from
Yes.
the consent agenda and discuss that separately?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, when would you like to discuss that?
After we vote on the rest of the items.
All right. Okay, may I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Well, except for,
I'm sorry, except for 7.1.5. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Alexander Baca as a long-term substitute in the position of social studies teacher at the Rhinebeck High School, effective on or around April 5th, 2019, through June 26th, 2019, at the pleasure of the board, at the salary of Step 1 MA, $60,225 prorated, in accordance with the RTA salary schedule for 2018-19. This appointment is to fill the vacancy created by the leave of absence granted to Natalie DeStrange, social studies teacher at the Rhinebeck High School.
second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the extension of Vicki Honer's appointment as a part-time special education teacher to provide special education services through June 26, 2019 by an additional 30 minutes per week to a total of 3.5 hours per week at the hourly rate of 1/7 of 1/200th of her, excuse me, of her final salary.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to reschedule 2 of 3 unused emergency closing days as school vacation days?
Okay, so the,
Second.
so the motion is to reschedule 2 of 3.
Yes.
Okay. So as I believe I mentioned to the board at our last meeting, I was looking at, and I'm still looking at, using those give back days on Friday, April 12th, and Monday, April 22nd, basically bookending our spring break, with the caveat that, you know, we don't have a horrific 3-day snowstorm between now and then, and may have to use that. Well, you know, stranger things have happened in the spring, so
Wasn't there an ice storm on April Fool's?
April 5th. April 5th.
Yeah,
so
So there you are.
so those are contingent upon not needing them before then. And I would recommend reserving the rescheduling of the 3rd unused snow day to just make sure we get closer to the end of the year.
Okay. Any questions?
So that'd be official tonight, those 2 days we send out, people are definitely waiting.
Are we
for
cursing
confirmation.
ourselves?
Well, you know what, I can't, I do, we may be, but I don't want to tell them the day before. You know, I
Fair
want to give parents some lead time. So you know, I'll put it out sometime within the next couple of days. We'll send out an email blast or whatever, so people will know, but
Yeah.
the caveat will be there in capital letters, boldface.
I'll check it out right after you send it out.
Yeah, well,
All right. All those in favor? That is unanimous. That motion passes.
okay.
May I have a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations with one of our bargaining units?
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We're moving into executive session.
Fantastic.